Welcome to We Are Already Free, a podcast inspiring down-to-earth seekers to live their truth and be the change, rather than spending too much time fighting against what they don't want. If you're not sure how to start on your journey of inner healing, or you need some support in getting back on your path, or even if you're deep in your medicine work and just want to resonate with some good vibes, then I think you'll love this episode. Kash Khan is a sacred men's circle leader, conscious community builder, plant spirit student, and founder of Educate, Inspire, Change, which had around 3 million followers on Facebook before it was cancelled. In this episode, Kash shares his insights on why all you need to do to heal is show up and surrender, why teenagers rebel and why conforming isn't the best option, how some of our greatest teachers are the people who cause us the most pain. He talks about what faith is and why focusing on and prioritizing your own inner healing is the most selfless act of all, and honestly, so much more. Near the end of our chat, Kash shares a beautiful truth about how true freedom is felt in the heart and can never be taken away from you. A great reminder in these times of external totalitarianism and mass psychosis. I'm your host, Nathan Maingard. After nearly losing my life trying to fit the dis-ease our society just calls being a good citizen, I dedicated my life to living with authenticity, joy, and wonder, and helping others like me to remember that we are already free. If this podcast serves you, please take a moment to leave a review so others can find this simple reminder and realize that they are not alone. This is not information which will be shared via mainstream channels, so let's amplify this beautiful vibration and bring it to the world. Please enjoy this uplifting conversation with the beautiful Kash Khan. Welcome, Kash Khan. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Just before we started recording, you were saying you've just come off a mushroom ceremony last night, so you haven't had much sleep. And first of all, thank you for still being up for this conversation. And what's alive for you right now after that experience?
Beautiful question. Yeah. So I guess what's alive for me is in the last year or so, I've been working a lot in plant medicine spaces, but I've been in service, working in ceremonies, holding space in ceremonies. And so last night was a small gathering with just really close soul family, friends, brothers and sisters. And it was a great opportunity for me just to receive, just to let go and express and not worry about holding space, because everybody that was there was in their own right. They're already deep on the path. So it was just a beautiful learning for me around the difference in holding space and the difference in receiving, And last night was a beautiful night of receiving, just stepping into my power and letting the medicine work through me. So I guess at the moment, with the Lionsgate last night, there's a portal opening. So last night was all about manifestation and abundance and manifesting our dreams into reality and vocalizing our dreams and working with the spirits and seeking approval from the spirits to kind of give us the encouragement and the support that we need to create our visions into reality.
It blows me away still. I don't know why I'm still surprised, but how the message that's been coming to me a lot recently is that we have all these guides and these spirits and these friends who want to help, but the rule is that they can't help until we ask for help. And this message has come to me about 3 times in the last month or two. And so I'm practicing asking for help a little more. And so this morning I was in my practice and was just asking for some support on many levels around one of my dear friends, my dog Sasa, passed 6 months ago. She disappeared. And it's been this process of grieving and the not knowing. Thank you. And the big part of it is the not knowing. It's where did she go? What happened? Where is she? What the fuck? And this morning I was just asking for some support, just hey, please just send me some guidance, some support in that area. And while I was in my session, I thought of my friend Deborah, whose mom just passed away just over a week ago, not even. And I was thinking, I really want to call her and just check in and see how Deborah's doing after that experience. And I turned on my phone after my practice, and there was a message from Deborah saying, I don't know why, but I really needed to send you this. This is the mantra that my mother fell in love with as she was fate, as she was heading towards her death, this was the mantra that supported her in her passing. It's a 40-minute long mantra, but I just felt like I needed to send it to you. I mean, it's just so beautiful. Ask and you shall receive, right?
For sure. Yeah, and we have to pay attention to the signs as well, you know. I feel like when we're on this path of self-healing and spirituality, and there's signs all around us in nature, the universe is always speaking to us, and it's just about tuning into that frequency, to being open to receiving and paying attention to the signs and really sitting with them and feeling into our heart. So the fact that you received that gift is probably a sign of how open you are to receiving.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's beautiful to feel like I'm supported. I think that's part of my shadow, is this feeling of aloneness. And I don't think I'm alone in that shadow, but which is funny. But I can only speak for myself, that there's this sense of like, I'm alone and I've been left alone and I'm abandoned, and like that's the shadowy voice. And so it's amazing to receive those messages. Even now, like to connect with you. A year ago, I was in Lionsgate in a mushroom journey with my dog Sasa at my side. She lay just relaxed at my side the entire night. And like I said before, I got in that journey, I didn't know it was Lionsgate, and I got a vision of a beautiful flower of life with a lion's face imprinted in it. And only afterwards, speaking with my beloved Carly, who was sitting for me, I was like, wow, I don't usually see such distinct visions like that. It was very specific. And she said, it's Lionsgate tonight. So here we are a year later, and you've just sat with the sacred mushrooms on Lionsgate. I mean, it's beautiful.
And I have a flower of life tattoo on my back as well.
Amazing. So what is you mentioned as well that the flower of life is a special one for you. I'd love to hear a little more about that.
Yeah, I just think since 2012, which is around the time when I started my first conscious business, if you like, and I became aware of sacred geometry. This is long before I encountered ayahuasca or mushrooms or any kind of psychedelic. I just deeply resonated with sacred geometry for whatever reason. And the time I was getting different tattoos made, and I chose to get all these different sacred geometric symbols on my body. And it wasn't until like 7 or 8 years later, when I did my first ayahuasca ceremony, that I really understood the sacredness and the relevance of these symbols. And I was looking at my body and I was like, wow, it's as if my higher self has been guiding me this whole time, And I actually even imprinted these symbols on my body, which is a really sacred act in itself. And these symbols ever since have just been really guiding me. I look at these symbols, Metatron's cube, the flower of life, the seed of life, all these different shapes that are ancient and probably are universal symbols. And when we look at these symbols and we study these symbols and we work with these symbols, there's a real deep knowledge, infinite information in these symbols, and we just have to pay attention to them and really understand them. And I like to draw them, I like to write them, I like to listen to music and just observe them. And I also have symbols around my house, and I feel like these symbols are like portals or gateways to other dimensions, if you want to call it that. And it's just a real education working with these sacred symbols and just observing them and being with them and trying to understand them and honor them. And yeah, sacred geometry is very dear to my heart. They call it the math of God, like the Fibonacci spiral and the golden ratio and all these things. And the more we study nature, the more we study the universe, but the more we study our inner verse, psychedelics, the more these symbols become more and more prevalent. So it's just like, I have a deep interest in the sacred science of spirituality. And I think sacred geometry is a big part of that.
Well, okay, so I have 2 questions, but I'm going to ask, the first is, so clearly you are on a deep spiritual path and you have been for quite a long time. And this podcast for me, We Are Already Free, is just a support and an invitation and a reminder to all those who are currently waking up in this time and often feeling quite overwhelmed and confused and isolated. And so just to offer support to those who might be really at the beginning of that journey, where they've maybe tried their best to fit within the constructs of the society that we were born into and are now realizing that is crumbling, they can't do that anymore. And I'm wondering if you might share a little bit of how that happened for you when you needed to start stepping into something different, something expanded, and what that looked like and what you would advise for others who are maybe just entering that journey.
Thank you. Yeah. So this path really found me, I created a conscious social media kind of page in 2012. And ever since then, I guess I was just self-educating, self-learning, understanding spirituality, quantum physics, nature, and all this stuff. And then over the course of those years, I attracted the attention of different retreats. Like there's a retreat here in Costa Rica that emailed me. They liked what I did, and they invited me to do ayahuasca. And ever since then, it's been a series of invitations, from the universe. I haven't really seeked it out at any point, it's always been seeking me. And I guess when I first did some research on ayahuasca and I made the journey to Costa Rica to work with plant medicine, I was really coming in like a baby, like a child. Like I had no idea what I was getting into. I just knew that there was a calling. I felt it in my heart. I was listening to people like Alan Watts and Terence McKenna. I used to watch the Joe Rogan podcast very often, and I would see people talking about DMT and mushrooms and ayahuasca. And so I was very interested by all this spirituality in the other realms, but I really, nothing could have prepared me for what was to come. And I think anyone that does any plant medicine for the first time says the same. But now that I have this hindsight, and I often meet people that are at the beginning of their path, and I guess there's some tips I would give them, and one of the biggest ones for me is the words trust and the words surrender, and also the word breathe. Quite often when we're in these altered states, or when we're working with spiritual plant medicines and plant spirits, we can go into our nervous system, can go into shock, or we can often resist whatever's coming up. And it's in this resistance where there's deep uncomfortableness, and it can often cause a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort. So to limit that, for me, it's a case of the more we can trust, the more we accept, the more we surrender, and also the more we use our breath as a tool just to find stability and harmony. This is going to give us the permission, if you like, to navigate these realms in a kind of graceful way, if you like. So I guess like just trusting, accepting, surrendering, paying attention to the signs as well. Like if you're feeling called to this path, there's a deep reason for that. There's not many people, I think, on the planet that are equipped to deal with a deep spiritual path. I feel like for some people, they might do plant medicine once and never again, or people might do it very occasionally, like once every few years. And for other people, once they do this, it's like a deep calling, and they feel the need to really embark on this path and dive deep. And for those people, there's a long road ahead, and it's just a case of trusting, of surrendering. There's a lot of shedding the skin that goes on. A lot of people have this idea that ayahuasca or magic mushrooms is going to heal you and fix you. And I would say that that's a myth. That's a complete myth, When you go to these plant spirits, what it's doing is allowing you to see yourself more clearly, giving you more awareness. And this can often be very unpleasant. Often you may have heard the words, the dark night of the soul, I've been doing plant medicine for 3.5 years, and I would say the first 2 years were extremely difficult, Lots of shedding of the skin, lots of obstacles to overcome, lots of challenges, lots of difficulties. And it's as if the plant spirits are testing you to make sure that you really have the tools and the determination to stay on this path, because this is a path of being in service to others, of not the service to self, it's a service to others. And to do this, you really need to be willing to look at yourself, to look at your own shadows, to release all the stuff that hasn't been serving you your entire life. And this involves a lot of deconditioning and a lot of unlearning. And from the minute we are born, we are conditioned and we're given a name. Most of us are given a religion. Most of us are told how to eat, how to live. And we just accept this as truth because our parents, our teachers, our society tells us this. And it's often in the teenage years where you'll find, they call it the rebellious teenage phase, because a lot of teenagers recognize something doesn't feel right with society, something doesn't feel right with what they're being taught, so they rebel. But what happens is we get drummed in so deeply by society, by marketing, by culture, by branding, by social media, that most people end up conforming to society. We have to get jobs, we have to pay, we have to live, we have to survive, But some of us keep listening to this little voice and we follow this path. And I guess it's just about reconnecting to your inner child in a way, and remembering that magic is real, that there are spirits out there, and just trusting that process for me is a big one. Just having deep trust, So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, I think It's interesting because what you're saying around surrender, trust, breath are all things that can be applied outside of ceremony. And in fact, I would recommend that people start applying them outside of ceremony if they're feeling called to ceremony, like, because it's nice to have something to, like, the first time I was with ayahuasca, and I feel like you might have a similar story, like I was not prepared. I had no context for, like, I mean I'd experimented a little bit with psychedelics as a youth just for fun, like many years before. But my first, I mean, I went like, I just had no breath, I couldn't even surrender. There was nothing to surrender. There was no me left. Like it was brutal, but in a good way. Like, I mean, I'm still here and I'm grateful for the journey. But I definitely think that it can be that practicing now, like gentle breath work or surrender, trust practices, gratitude, etc., can help someone to kind of prepare for it, even though there's no way to fully prepare.
Yeah, I agree. For me, it's like our nervous systems, are not designed to cope with psychedelics because we're not accustomed to those realms. And I guess the breath is a beautiful tool to balance your nervous system, So, like you say, if we can practice deep breathing, connecting to nature, meditation's a great practice as well, just to calm your nerves so that when you do enter these realms, you're able to navigate them with more grace, with more awareness, to be more still, to be more present. I think presence is a big one for me. It's the one thing, I guess, that over the last 3 years has become more and more prevalent. It's become more and more important to me to cultivate presence because I recognize how important that is for all of us, just to exist as a beneficial presence on the planet. We need to manage our own emotions, to manage our own nervous system, to regain sovereignty over our mind, our body, and our spirit, And it's not an easy task because for me, it was like 36 or 37 years of unlearning I had to do to enter into this new world, and took a lot of deep work and deep releasing, lots of purging, lots of crying, lots of vomiting over many years, over many ceremonies, to get to the stage where I am now, where I feel I'm able to show up in these kind of places and not only show up for myself, but be able to hold space for others, But that came about through, I guess, just a willingness to show up as well, Well, for me, I always just encourage people that I speak to just to show up. If you can show up, if you can have the courage to turn up at these ceremonies, or if you're looking for some kind of personal growth or spiritual growth, to get that coach, to do that breathwork session, to go to that yoga class, to book that ayahuasca retreat, whatever it is, if you can just do that work to show up, and then all you have to do after that is really just surrender. That's the hard part, is just getting there. Once you're there, you just need to get out of your own way, and let the spirits do their work. So I guess it's just that those words, showing up, I use them every week in my men's circle that I run, is I just honor the brothers for showing up. I say thank you for showing up, because the fact that you're here, now all you have to do is lie back and relax and enjoy the evening and enjoy the ceremony and surrender, and connect. And so showing up's a big one for me as well.
So I wanted to check in around this sacred men's circle. It's something I'm just very interested in. So could you share a little more about what men's work means for you and what it means for you to be a men's work facilitator?
Sure. So around a little over a year ago, I was doing lots of ayahuasca ceremonies, working in service, and I saw a deep lack of integration, in people that were going to ceremonies and traveling from all over the world, coming to Costa Rica and then going back home again and entering back into the rat race. And I felt like, for me personally, just creating a space where brothers can come together to share and to integrate the plant medicine journeys would be a beautiful act of service. It's almost like a spiritual payment. And it was also a form of discipline for me to give myself a spiritual practice every week where I create this space, and it's allowing me to show up for myself, to connect to spirit, to do breath work, to connect to brothers. And even on some weeks, there would be very few weeks when nobody would turn up, and I would be there myself, but I would use the opportunity to sit with myself, to work with plant spirits and just to connect. And I made a firm commitment to spirit, to myself, that I'm going to do this every week. And by doing so every week, by employing that level of self-discipline, and for me, self-discipline is another word for self-love. So by loving myself so much, by doing this circle for myself every week, I recognized I was becoming my own conscious leader. And then as more brothers showed up every week and connected every week, they were becoming their own conscious leaders as well. And so we called this circle the Conscious Leader Sacred Men Circle, because it's all about men stepping into their power, becoming their own conscious leaders and elevating one another and standing together, but as individuals, And it was a lot about, for me, initially it started off as just sharing, just a talking circle. So we'd be in a circle, we'd lower the lights, light some fires, honor the spirits, and then we just start talking. We would have a talking stick, and then over the months, it started to evolve as my spiritual practice improved. I started to serve sacred tobacco, happy or rappy, they call it. I started to serve this, and I started to serve cacao. And then I also became a breathwork facilitator as well. So we started employing these healing modalities, and spirits started to come and visit us in these sacred circles, and we would connect to our ancestors, we'd connect to spirits, we'd have deep wisdom, channeled music, channeled sharing. There'd be tears, there'd be joy, there'd be connection, physical touch, just like brothers hugging one another, feeling supported by each other, deep releasing, deep connection. And we realized that, wow, we're really onto something here, and it's just been beautiful to be part of a circle where we can feel supported as part of a conscious community, because I feel for hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions of years, humans existed in small tribes, in small communities. And this is how we functioned, This is why addictions or prostitution maybe weren't such a thing when we had tribes, because we'd all support one another, If people in the tribe were lacking, or if there was a single woman with children, there'd always be support and care and love. Or if somebody was disabled or less able, there'd always be people around to support. And it feels like in alignment with the Industrial Revolution, as capitalism and corporatism takes over the planet, this community feeling has kind of diminished. You can have like 5 million people living in a city, and it can be the loneliest place in the world. So I feel like these circles were just a way to remember who we are, to honor our ancestors, and remember how they, for thousands and thousands of years, sat around fires and told stories and shared and played music in much in the same way that we're doing. So it's just about remembering who we are, remembering our past, and honoring our ancestors as well. Because when I think about my mother and what she sacrificed for me to be alive, she's going through the pregnancy, raising me as a child, and then I think about her mother that did the same for her. And then I realize that there's a long chain of women that might extend back thousands of generations of survivors that had to survive so me and you can be here to thrive, to live, and to enjoy. And this circle is a real opportunity for us just to give thanks and to pay respect to those that came before us, and then to also turn our life of an act of service as a way of giving back, as a way of respecting nature, because not only our mothers, not only the fathers that came before us, but also nature that's held all of us in the past, the trees that provide oxygen, the water that sustains us, the sun, the earth, all the elements. All this is a gift, from God, if you want to call it, or source. And we often forget this, One of the Taitas, his name is Taita Gabriel, that I work with from Colombia. He's a shaman. And he often says, imagine if somebody gave you the greatest gift, like a bag of $10 million, yeah? He says, imagine how grateful you would feel for receiving this gift, or someone buys you a private jet. He goes, think how grateful you would be. You'd be brought to tears with gratitude. He goes, well, imagine you didn't have trees to breathe. You would not be able to receive that gift. So why are you not equally grateful for the trees? Why are you not equally grateful for your breath? Why are you not equally grateful for life? Because without life, you could not receive this gift. When we play with our children or make love to our wives or whatever, we're so happy and so blissful, but we forget that we could not receive this if we did not have life. So it's like the sacred art of living is to remember, is to live from a frequency of gratitude. We are always receiving. Even since the beginning of this podcast, we've been receiving abundance, We're having breath. I'm sipping on tea. I have Palo Santo. I have sage. We have access to this magical wand that we call a mobile phone that gives us ability to communicate across countries, and really connect. There's abundance all around us. We're receiving. I can hear the birds in the background. I can see the sun shining. Everything's giving. And it's just about remembering that we're always receiving. But humans have a funny way of blocking ourselves from receiving. We forget that we're receiving all the time. And we enter into this mindset of lack, which is a lot to do with conditioning of society, that we're not enough. We're looking at social media. We're seeing people that have more cars, more money, and we're thinking, oh, we don't have enough. We're looking at celebrities and we're idolizing them. And we're forgetting that, hang on a second, that you are the center of your own universe. And what happens in your life really matters, and your interactions with people really matter, and how you go about your day and the small things that you do really matter. And spirit's as much with you as he is with anyone on the planet, and we're all connected. And it's just about connecting to our intuition, connecting to our inner verse, and understanding that everything that we need is here within us right now. And we don't need to seek validation or acceptance externally. We only need to look inside and remember that we already have everything that we need. So this men's circle, to come back to your question, is a way for me of deep remembering. And that's really, to put it in a very simple way, it's just a way to remember.
Yeah, that's just a lot of beauty right there, brother. I'm just taking a moment.
Mm-hmm. Take your time.
Yeah, it's interesting how there's this remembrance that you're it, that I'm it, and that remembrance happens in connection with other. So there's this beautiful interplay between realizing I'm it and I realize I'm it when I'm realize that with others. I mean, isn't that a beautiful poetic setup?
Yeah. Beautiful. Can I share something with you?
Please.
So I follow, I don't know if you've heard of the Law of One, the Book of Ra, but there's an ancient Egyptian god that's often worshipped. And in the Egyptian times, they say that there were higher beings that came to earth and lived among us. And then for whatever reason, they left, but they're still connected to us. And there's a body of work where this god came back and he channeled wisdom through these people that were channelers or deep in meditation, and this spirit came to them, and 3 people wrote this book. But anyway, the point I'm saying is he talks about human connection and how God created the universe to know himself, he created creation so that he can know himself, which we spoke about the flower of life, So the flower of life, originally there was nothing, and then there was, we say nothing, but we also can say infinity at the same time. Nothing and everything is the same, And it was like a point of consciousness was created. And the most optimal way of knowing yourself is to create a sphere around you, which is why all the planets are circular spheres, because this is the most optimal shape. And then this circle all of a sudden split into 2. And this created, the Vesica Pisces. And then this kept going on and on until the seed of life, the fruit of life, the flower of life. And then from here, creation started, And the point I'm trying to make is we all have a little bit of God within us. So, for example, if you have a wife and you love your wife deeply, and you're in the throes of making love, and you're in ecstasy, and in these moments, this is a heightened state of consciousness where it's like God is seeing God. You can feel nothing else but love and gratitude in that moment, and it's like the highest expression of God. Equally, when I look at my son's eyes, when I sit with you right now, I recognize that on a deeper level, this is God speaking to God. So when I can really connect to you, and when I can have nothing but love and compassion for you, and you can have the same for me, and there's no judgment there, and then I see almost myself reflected back at me in your eyes. So there's a famous poet called Rumi, and there's a beautiful poem that he says is there was a man, a farmer, who was given a beautiful life. He had abundance his whole life. He had family his whole life, animals his whole life. All his children got married. He had grandchildren, and he had a great life. And he died peacefully in his sleep. And he died, and he went to God. And he said to God, like, I don't understand. Like, you've given me a beautiful life. I had an amazing wife. I had beautiful children. I had abundance all my life. And now I'm going to die. And now I'm dead. And I'm in heaven. And now I'm going to have eternity in heaven. Like, what's the catch? And God said to him that when I created you out of mud. And now I look at you and you're back at me, and I look at you and I see my own reflection in you, because that's how pure you are. And that's the greatest gift you can give God, because God is everything. So there's nothing else we can give God other than allowing him to see himself in us. So this is the beauty of connection. So when people connect in a deep level, like we do in the men's circles, like we do in ceremonies, like we do with one-to-one work and intimacy work and tantra and all this stuff, we're actually we're elevating one another. So I'm seeing you and you're elevating me, and you're seeing me and I'm elevating you. And this is like a deep moment of awareness of like, we're all one. You said earlier around the feeling of being alone. I look at the word alone, and there's an etymology to this word. If you separate al and one, it's all one. There's no such thing as alone. It's actually a myth. We're never alone. We always have our spirit guides. When you're thinking, your thought comes from somewhere. So where does that thought come from? You're never really alone, And I guess it's just understanding that when we look at people, It's our ability to see God in everybody and everything, even people that we say evil exists, yeah? But in my understanding, working in plant medicine, there is no such thing as evil. There's only a spectrum of light. And there's darkness and light, but it's all a spectrum of light at the end of the day. And if we weren't able to observe the entire spectrum, we wouldn't understand it. If we don't understand the darkness, we don't understand the light. There can be no light without darkness. So it's just acceptance, like we mentioned earlier, acceptance, having compassion, having love, being able to forgive all those that came before us, being able to have compassion for even those that continue to harm us, or having compassion for even those that are not, we feel they're not serving the planet. But who are we to say they're not serving the planet? Some of our greatest teachers are the people that cause the most pain in our life, because they're our biggest teachers. And who's to say they're not higher beings from the sixth dimension that are sent here to teach us? So I choose to honor everyone and everything and every experience I have in my life. I ask myself one question, and the question is, what do I learn from this? And if we can apply that question to everything in our life, then I feel this is a very powerful tool to transmute any energy and to reclaim our power. What do I learn from this? If someone harms me, if someone loves me, if someone neglects me, if someone ignores me, if somebody does anything, what do I learn from this? And by me doing this, I'm stepping into my power. And I'm not allowing anyone to deplete me. I'm learning always. And Earth for me is a school that we chose to come to, and we're learning. And the more we learn, the more we're stepping into our power. And I feel like at some point through evolution, we'll graduate until we can enter into our light bodies and just exist in the spiritual realms. But I do believe that we come back many, many times to undo karma, that from past lives, from this life, and it's up to us to end the karma. And we do this by releasing all that stuff that no longer serves us, and just being present and accepting and having compassion. And then once we can reach this state of mind, what I find is I'm able to balance my emotions so much better than I ever used to. If things fall down around me, I come back to my breath, I use my spiritual tools, I connect to my spirit guides, I connect to my ancestors, and I ask for guidance. I ask to remember my strength. I don't pray for strength. I pray to remember how strong I am, because there's a difference. If I pray for something, it means I lack it. So those prayers aren't really heard. But if I pray to remember my own strength and then take action on that prayer, then the guides and spirit supports us when we support ourselves. I feel like I'm going off on a tangent, but yeah. I also want to show something to you as well. This is my bottle right in front of me. So as we're speaking, I have the flower of life staring at me. I just noticed that.
Yeah. The flower of life is definitely present in this conversation. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. Well, geez, I was a fantastic tangent. I deeply resonate with everything that you're sharing. And there's an interesting one around the transformational journey, which I've been thinking about a lot recently, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. But we often talk about this state of, like you're saying, if we keep practicing and cleanse our karma, like however many generations, however long it takes, we'll eventually be spiritual beings. And the interesting thing I find is that because we are, as you said, like nothing is everything, infinity. So we are in an infinite universe, which is impossible, and yet it is what it is, which is beautiful. Like the paradox of existence is that it's impossible, but it's here. I guess I'll use a story because it's easier for me to tell that way. But basically the story of the caterpillar and the butterfly. And anyone who's been listening to the podcast for a few episodes will have heard this one before, because I just thought of it recently, and it's one of my favorite like new ways of thinking about things. Because I realized, and the cover of this podcast is a butterfly like this. So it's definitely, I connect to that beautiful image and that representation. And what I realized was that every butterfly lays eggs and then dies at some point. And then those eggs become caterpillars, and those caterpillars, they eat a lot. They actually devour, they destroy a lot in their growth as they feed themselves whatever they need to grow. And then they make their cocoon, and then they have to dissolve completely. They have their own dark night of the soul where they dissolve into caterpillar mush before, again, there's a butterfly. But I guess the story for me is interesting in that every stage of that is necessary and is as valid as every other stage, and is in fact infinite. It will continue. And so I'm just curious, I feel like it's a useful perspective to have in the spiritual world of like, where everyone's talking about ascending and enlightenment and all these things. Like, okay, well, you'll be enlightened for as long as you like, and then you'll lay an egg and then there'll be another caterpillar. So what do you think about that?
No, I love that. Yeah, like I'm immediately receiving the download that there was a Taita who's now passed, but he was 108 years old, and he'd been drinking his entire life ayahuasca, you know. And after 100, people are like asking him the question, like, why do you still drink medicine? You know, you must have done tens of thousands of ceremonies. And he says, because the healing never stops, you know, there's always new stuff that we take on. Like, there's always growth. There's always room for understanding, for awareness. It's like a deep mystery. Life is a deep mystery, and there's no like as humans, we often seek the answers from our mind, you know, like trying to understand everything so we can feel safe. But it's accepting that as a wise man once said, nothing. I think that's a famous quote by somebody like Socrates, you know. It's like by just accepting that we know nothing, you know, and then from this space, just being humble and recognizing that the path never ends, you know. If anything, the more we are on this path, it's the more awareness we have, then the more we can start to heal ancestral wounds and generational trauma. We can connect to our cosmic ancestors. It's never ending. The growth is never ending. We're always shedding skin. Just when we think we've nailed it and we've healed and we've grown, and then all of a sudden it's like the universe just confronts you again with another deep truth and more work to be done. And the work never really ends, you know. And that for me is what's really appealing about this path for me. It's the ultimate adventure. It's the ultimate path of knowing that there is no path, almost, you know. It's like just being deeply present and accepting. And I guess that's why meditation is such a powerful tool, because in those deep meditative practices, we empty our mind, we empty our thoughts, and we just connect to spirit, we connect to oneness, we connect to the universe. And it's in there that we just melt into this nothingness and we become everything and nothing at the same time. And it's like, this is just going to continue forever. You know, we're infinite beings and we're on this cycle, and it's just going to keep creating, keep reproducing, never ending. Even the universe, as far as my understanding goes, it just keeps growing, and then eventually it will implode in itself and then it will grow again. And maybe we've had this conversation infinite times already. Like, who knows, you know? So it's just accepting this and being humble in this, that there's some things we don't know, there's some things we're not meant to know, but what we can do is just have a deep presence and a deep acceptance and deep faith, if you want to call it that, you know. And faith is a deep, powerful word for me. It's accepting everything, like you said, I said earlier, the darkness and the light, you know. It's all one. So we can't be ascended masters in the light if we don't accept the darkness and be willing to look at the shadows and be able to navigate those shadows and those dark places, you know. So yeah, it's always shedding the skin, you know. Every ceremony that we do, we're coming in a different person, because each time we're changing. So every ceremony is a new version of us. Every day is a new version of us, you know. Like even the version of you in a year from now will have different hair, will have different skin. You know, your body will shift, your body will change. We're constantly changing, constantly shifting. Like you mentioned, the caterpillar and the butterfly. Humans aren't the same. Like I don't look the same as I did 5 years ago. I don't look the same as I did a year ago. I'm changing all the time. My mannerisms are changing. The way I communicate is changing. I'm learning different things every day. We're always changing. We're never the same. And I guess nature is that as well. Nature is never stagnant. If something in nature becomes stagnant, it dies. You know, like if you look at water and it's stagnant, it forms disease. So rivers that flow, birds that fly, animals that eat one another and consume, and plants that grow. It's always moving, always changing, always dying, always being reborn. And this is what humans, I guess, need to face, is that we are nature and we're going to die as well. And it's that impermanence of life, I feel, that makes life beautiful. Can you imagine if we thought we were never going to die? You know, like if we knew we were never going to die and living on Earth for eternity, like what kind of existence that would be? It's the knowing that we're not going to be here that makes us appreciate every moment, that allows us to cultivate presence, that encourages us to grow, to move forward. You know, we only have maybe 100 years at best, you know. So if we had 10,000, imagine how differently we would live, you know. So I guess it's just remembering the impermanence of life, that and applying that that's the macroverse, but applying that to the microverse, like every day is different, every day is new challenges, every day is new healing, new opportunities. So yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I feel like that relates to how our society is trying to play a finite game. It's trying to play its own infinite game, but not the way the game actually works. So what I mean by that is that we have corporations and identities and egos and structures that our society is trying to make infinite, but that's not how infinity works. Like, so it's like, well, if we just build this corporation big enough, and if we eat enough, if we take enough and get enough power or attention or whatever the currency is that's being traded, then we'll be immortal. Then we can live forever. And that's not how the infinite game works. It just simply isn't. So, and yet we see the results within our current societal consciousness that is now quite rapidly delaminating. For very good reasons.
Yeah, I resonate with all of that. Yeah, for sure.
And how do you, because you're giving so much to being the change you want to see, basically, which is such a simple and beautiful saying. And it's interesting because a lot of people think Gandhi said it, but actually it's not attributed to Gandhi. I haven't found a source for it, but it's a truth. It's a thing. Be the change you want to see in the world. And yet, one of the things I witness, I'm just thinking what is it that I'm wanting to say here? But basically, I think you actually said it earlier now that I think of it. It's basically, I focus on myself so that as I heal, I have more spaciousness to then serve others. And that's actually the cycle. It's not I focus on myself because I want to keep taking, which is what I've done at times and do at times because of feelings of lack. That's the actual dis-ease. But it's I'm prioritizing my inner work, my healing, my showing up, as you said, the showing up and the surrendering, because through that, I am given what I need to show up more in the world. I have those calls then to be of service out in the world. And that's the natural route it needs to take. I love myself so I can love my neighbor. Is that?
Yeah, completely true. I mean, it reminds me of like shamanism. Shamanism has been around like long before religion. It's how humans connected to spirit for all of known history. And when I ask myself, what is a shaman? A shaman is not somebody that heals others. A shaman is merely somebody that has healed himself, so much so where he's able to create spaces where others can do the same for themselves. So in a way, we're all our own shaman. Some of us, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to serve ayahuasca or serve mushrooms to people. Being a shaman can be anything. A mother can be a shaman, an entrepreneur can be a shaman, a musician can be a shaman. All you are is your own healer. And I guess by becoming your own healer, you're able to, like you would say, hold space for yourself. So when I can hold space for myself, for example, I have children, so when they see me not being led by emotions, not losing my temper, by being in harmony, when they see my energy and they see me overcoming obstacles with integrity, with grace, they feed off this energy. And this gives them the ability to hold space for themselves as well. And this is the greatest gift that we can give to people around us, is by our ability to look after ourselves, And we're on this planet alone. At the end of the day, we are in these bodies. We have to go through life in these bodies by ourselves. And often we can forget and we can externalize the whole world. And we need medication, we need doctors, we need teachers, we need gurus. And in the end, like, this is all just a distraction from the truth that everything you need is within you already. And it's just about tapping into that and understanding that it's not selfish. Self-love is not a selfish act. It's people can get misconstrued because in the 3D world, making money and doing things can be deemed as a selfish act, and to some extent that is. But in the spiritual realms, when we're being selfish in terms of spiritual practice, looking after ourselves, being mindful of what we eat, taking our time, protecting our energy, being careful with who we share our energy with, being alone in nature. This is not selfish. This is self-love, which is a big difference, And from this act of self-love, I'm able to live a life of being in service to others. So it's the ultimate act of selflessness, really, is by loving yourself so much. So yeah, it really resonates.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Because one of the things I notice right now that's it's almost like a sneaky weapon. I don't know if that's the right word. Sneaky distraction is that like social media and the media in general is constantly calling for me and for the individual to be enraged about something out there and to go out there and shout at someone else who doesn't understand how important this thing is. And I could hashtag 1,000 hashtags that, I don't think it's necessary to give examples, but like, it's that sense of any of those people, any of us, me, when I feel that urge to go out there and change something out there, am I willing to sit with the discomfort of visiting that thing in myself and that's like an interesting shift. And that's what I hear you saying. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
I used to run an online business and I had millions of followers on Facebook. It was called Educate, Inspire, Change. And the tagline was educate yourself, inspire others, change the world. And over the years, this evolved from me sharing information about what's going wrong in the world, like exposing child poverty, exposing war crimes, exposing corrupt politicians and corrupt pharmaceutical businesses. And I would often, it would receive a lot of attention, but people would in the end feel helpless because what can they do? It's very hard to battle the systems in society, like the prison system, the military system, the education system. And I recognized that what I was doing was almost feeding the fear. I was adding to the problem. Yes, my intentions were good and I was raising awareness and I was educating, which is a very important part of life. But on a deeper level, almost what I was doing was I was feeding the fear. And I understood that the way we can transmute this energy is we can only control what happens within ourselves, so we can control what we eat, what we consume, the media that we consume, the food that we consume, how we live our life. And so when we can reclaim sovereignty over our mind, our body and our spirit, then automatically our reality starts to shift. And we start to attract the right people, the good energies, the ceremonies, the conscious community. And if more people started to do this, started to look at inwards and look at themselves, then it's almost like we stop paying attention to what's going wrong in the world and we start to pay attention to the love within us. And by not paying attention, it starts to lose its power. So if everybody started doing ceremonies and healing and personal development and spiritual growth tomorrow, all of a sudden, all these institutions would collapse because they're not being given attention anymore. When I think about taxpayers in the country, and it's like 99.9% of the population are paying tax, and 0.1% of the population are billionaires that are not paying tax, And I think about if those 99.9% just decided to stop, everything falls apart, and we become decentralized and we become sovereign again. But it's just people don't have that awareness. So I guess it's just having that awareness of how powerful we are, reclaiming our power and reclaiming our sovereignty that's going to be the key to solving the world's problems.
So before we part ways, there's just a few more things I'd like to ask. And this podcast is obviously called We Are Already Free. And for context, that came from a poem I wrote called We Are Already Free, which was just when this whole thing started unfolding a few years ago around pandemic and what to do, and everyone has to take the medicine, otherwise you're a bad person, and all the stories that were unfolding. And I honor everyone for whatever their position is within it. I tried to express that for me, I think that bodily sovereignty is still critical and that we can't take that away from people no matter what our opinion is about it. Mm-hmm. And when I was first sharing about it, it was just creating more and more polarization. And so I stopped. But this desire to speak my truth kept rising. And so eventually I started writing these long form poems. I've been a songwriter and a musician for many years, but this was my first time really stepping into spoken word poetry. And that poem is one of them that came out, We Are Already Free. And so that term, that sentence has really stayed with people and with me as a kind of a mantra, of a reminder of, like you've been talking about, these reminders that are valuable for us to return to our natural state, that we are already free. And so I'd just love to hear any thoughts you have or anything that comes through for you when you think of or when you say that term, we are already free.
I mean, it's a very beautiful statement, and I think it comes back to me around just remembering. So when you say we're already free, it's just that frequency for me, like the highest form of thought is like love, gratitude. And in that space, that's where the magic is. And so when you say we are already free, it's accepting that everything we have is already within us. And when we can remember this, that we are our own shamans, that we are our own healers, that we are infinite beings of light, then there's a very freeing feeling that comes from this deep knowing. It's not something you can understand with the mind. It's only something that you can feel with the heart. True freedom is felt in the heart. It's not something that we can logically think about, like some people say money buys you freedom. But I know many people that are very wealthy and they are not free. They're almost trapped in their own prisons, So the concept of being free for me is about the journey that we take from our head to our heart. When we can start to live from the heart, we start to become free. We start to be one with nature. We start to recognize the abundance that's all around us. We start to recognize that we are never alone. we start to recognize that we do not exist from a place of fear. We exist only from love. We are grateful for every experience. We learn from everything. We grow from everything. And in this, there's a deep freedom, So like whatever life throws at me, I no longer choose to be the victim. Therefore, I am free because I'm learning from everything. I'm grateful for everything. And in this, there's a freedom. You could take away my house, you could take away my family, you could take away everything, but you cannot take away my connection to spirit. So I feel like even like I have children, and people who love their children deeply, but there's even a feeling in me. I do feel like I'm in service to others, and that makes me a better father. So I'm not a father first. I'm in service first. And as a result of doing this, I'm free to be the best version of myself. I can show up as a father, as a conscious entrepreneur, as a sacred circle leader, as a space holder, because I'm accessing this freedom, that you talk about, because I'm remembering. So for me, living from the heart is the definition of being free.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful sharing. And I just really honor having just met you in this conversation. Thank you for trusting to step into the space with me. And thank you for showing up for yourself, for doing that beautiful work of becoming you, fully you. I love being me with you. And so thank you. It's an honor. And just one final thing, which is if the beautiful listener right now, the listeners are wanting to explore you further and connect with you further, how can they best do that?
Sure. I have a few social media accounts. My personal Instagram is Conscious Kash with a K, Kash. And I also have a platform that we mentioned earlier called Educate, Inspire, Change. We used to have 3.5 million Facebook followers, but this is another story. That page was taken down. But I still have an Instagram channel called Educate, Inspire, Change. There's also a podcast called Educate, Inspire, Change, but although I haven't used it for a while, but people can connect with me there. There's a website, educateinspirechange.org, that people can access, and I'm freely available. You can go on YouTube. I've been a part of some different ayahuasca documentaries. You can just type in Educate, Inspire, Change or Conscious Kash or Kash Khan on YouTube, and you'll find me everywhere.
Well, thank you. I actually heard about that story of your Facebook page, and I was going to ask you about it, but it just kind of like the conversation just went in a different direction, and which is it wasn't about what was, it's about what is, which I think was an interesting that that's what's coming through right now. So
beautiful.
Yeah, but I feel like I look forward and hope that we get to have many more conversations along the path to, as you say, in service to, that was my prayer at the beginning of this, lighting my sage, was just like, please, just like Spirit, use me and use this conversation as a way to just support those who are out there on this path who maybe are feeling alone or overwhelmed or looking for their own guidance, or what do they turn to? And I feel like, if anything, hearing your words today has really been an invitation to turn inward. And so thank you again, brother. It's been an honor.
Thank you for creating this space and inviting me, and for seeing me the way you do. I see you too. Thank you, brother.
Thank you again to the wonderful Kash Khan for his beautiful offering, his time, his presence, his medicine work. There's a beautiful saying I heard on Laura Dawn's podcast, the Psychedelic Leadership podcast, where she got some advice from a friend at one point when she was really struggling with something. And the friend said, Laura Dawn, really the only thing any of us can do is to get right with ourselves. And that's become something of a mantra for me, as I notice more and more attention and intensity in the world, more and more people calling for external, we have to be upset about this, we have to focus on that, trying to point us in different directions to be angry about different things. And I'm trying to find this compass within myself of what is the stuff to give my attention to. And I realize that it's so important that I get right with myself in the deepest of ways, that I become my own medicine, my own healer, and that as my capacity for service expands, as my energy expands, my own ability to show up in the world expands, and so I then can take action on the things that I witness around me. Where can I be of service within my community, within my family, within the circles of those who I can directly impact, and trust that if we all do that, the whole world changes overnight. It's as simple as that, and it ain't easy. So just know that I'm here with you on this journey. I'm delighted to be with you. I'm honored that we can walk this path together. You are not alone. And I just I'm here. That's really all I can say, that we are already free, and I'm here, and I want to serve you on this path. So please reach out if you're enjoying this podcast. Feel free to send me a voice note, and you can find links and podcast notes as well, the show notes for all the links of things that Kash and I discussed, and links to his work, to his different pages that he mentioned at the end there. If you go to podcast.wearealreadyfree.com, you'll find everything you need. My voice is a bit tired today. I've been talking a lot. It feels like there's a lot of old energy coming up in my life at the moment. And I'm just meeting it all with as much grace as I can. I suppose that's always the invitation. It's not what is happening externally, but how do I meet what is happening? How do I approach it? Am I taking it personally? Am I making assumptions? Am I being impeccable with my word? Am I doing my best? For anyone who hasn't read The 4 Agreements, highly recommend you read that book. It was recommended to me by my dear beloved Carly, my sweetheart, and I love that book. It's become such a good one in my life. Anyway, it's lovely to connect with you. I obviously don't know who you are or where you are or how you are. I would love to know. So please do, if you feel the urge to reach out and connect, I would love to hear more about you. If you leave a voice note asking questions or sharing what your challenges are, your triumphs, the things you're going through, I would love to serve you by sharing that on this podcast and sharing my response here. It would be an honor, in fact, to serve you in that way. And you can also use my services, book yourself a free discovery call if the urge calls you, if you'd like to see if we can do some work together, some breath work, some coaching, some songs and stories, some intuitive guiding. Again, it would be an honor to be of service to you in any way, shape, and form. So make sure to go to podcast.wearealreadyfree.com or just email me, nathan@wearealreadyfree.com. And the final request is, if you aren't yet, please do subscribe to this podcast. And the biggest request of all is please review this podcast. I know it may not seem like much to you. It'll take you 30 seconds, maybe a minute of your time. But really, it could be the difference between a person who could really benefit from these messages, from this medicine. It could be the difference between them clicking play on that first episode or just moving right on by. You know more than anyone what this podcast brings into your life. You know the value, you felt it, you're here on this journey. So please, if you can, take a moment and leave that podcast. You can just go to podcast.wearealreadyfree.com/review, and that'll allow you to open it in whichever apps you choose. My name is Nathan Maingard. It is a pleasure to walk this path with you. I'm going to go rest my voice now. And I hope you enjoyed Kash Khan. We have so many beautiful guests coming, and I'm just so honored that I get to share these conversations with you. You beautiful, beautiful human. Crazy last fact, a wilding or a wildling is something that has escaped captivity and returned to the wild. So I think that those of us in this time who are choosing awakening, no matter how uncomfortable that can become at times, we are choosing to wake up and own our sovereignty and own the remembrance and the responsibility that we are already free. We are wildings. We are escaping captivity, returning to the wild and growing into the fullness of ourselves as we were always meant to be. So a beautiful wilding. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. Blessings on the path.